holy. In the name of Allah, the all merciful, the especially merciful, and sending favor on our leader Muhammad, his family, and his companions, all of them. Good morning, good morning. We're taking a chance here, being live this early in the morning. It's always a chance with a toddler around, to be frank. I can feel my anxiety flaring up, but you know, I think that it's better late. It's better to do it early than never, in my opinion, because what I want to share today is just so juicy to me. Like I have been itching to. I know I said this last time, but it's really a continuation of that conversation and that question by a sister. Thank you so much, dear sister. And specifically asking about karmic ties and how we dispel this idea of karma in the Hindu sense, the mainstream Hindu sense, because some Hindus do believe in you being able to change your so-called caste or fate or place, but we dispelled that where karma, right, which is generosity, sometimes known as a phenomenon, is way, it's like karma 2.0. It's just another level. And we have that, like we know about that, we know Allah's al-Kareem. So, the thing that I wanted to expand on today was really discussing how we come to these conclusions. Like, why is Hinduism so bought in the mainstream? Taoism, Buddhism is so like spiritual and understood to be so, whereas in Islam, it's seen as this rigid religion with no inward meanings. And like oftentimes I want to think in either or, like either it's a strict religion or it's a fluid spirituality with no routines, no repetition, no rituals. And Islam is really the best of both worlds. So that's why I wanted to call this the war on mystery, the abstract, repetition, and history. Because, sister, I'm gonna tell you, it's not gonna be the most straightforward answer that you might be hoping for. But hopefully, as we go through some case studies of the Quran specifically, and hopefully you relate them to your life, then you will start to see a pattern. You will start to see repetition. You will start to see history repeats itself, right? So ultimately, it's a war on truth because you will recognize the signs, not just from the Quran, but in your own life if you look closely enough. And so we begin, let's look at the case study of Prophet Adam, alayhi salam. Naturally, they didn't have ancestors, Adam and Hawa, our father Adam, and our grandmother Hawa. And so they, their curse, quote unquote, started with the um, shaitan. But again, I wouldn't call it that necessarily because it's a blessing. It was a big blessing. That's when we found out about the first Tawbah, how merciful Allah really is, um, how much margin for error there is, right? Like everything in the garden was allowed to them except one tree. And so, what does that say about us? Hi, Russ Rossley. Nice to see you from Russia. So, what does that say about us, though, like in our lives where we have so much margin for error? And so, what happened was we had this reputation. I wouldn't call it a curse necessarily, but a generational understanding of how humans are from that model of Adam and Hawa, and then also of how Shaitan is, or Satan, our enemy, that he promised he would come to us from our left and our right and from behind us and this way, like pretty much every way but above. And and so, we see this example of something that seems like a curse, but a lot of this is a long game, brothers and sisters. Something that may seem like a curse in the moment, or something that may seem like a karmic tie that's bringing you down, right? A trauma bond. It's a long game. So, um, the most extensive prophetic story we see is of Yusuf and how, it took years, over a decade, if not decades, before his karma or the karama, right? The phenomenon from being a slave in the well, to this king, to being the king himself, right? And actually delivering justice himself by Allah's will to his father, his most beloved. And some say even the woman, like I want to go into Joseph later because that's like the biggest example because it's again it's the only chapter that's just fully laid out as a prophet story. And that's a great case study for these karmic ties you speak about. So again, we don't really believe in that because, okay, for instance, the sins of Adam did not carry on to the sin of Adam and Hawa, or the missing the mark, right? Because that's what a sin means. It didn't carry on to their children, right? Habil and Qabil, Cain and Abel, they, according to the Quran, um, Qabil, he made a he missed the mark big time. And instead of accepting it, like the shaitan, right? Unlike his parents, he said he got jealous and he killed his brother. But even with him, he had remorse. He saw the birds. He gave us a model for how to do things. And what does it say when you get to be the grandfather of the Prophet? Is that a karmic tie? Is that a curse? No. So again, we're seeing where these things don't carry over. Like everybody is accountable for themselves. Nobody is going to take the missing the mark of their previous ancestors. That doesn't even make sense. And what else also doesn't make sense is getting the blessings of them, but yet Allah does that. Going back to the war and mystery, people don't want to accept that. We want so badly for Allah to be tit for tat, like, oh, you have to earn things. You have to earn your blessings. No, Allah is just like that. You don't have to earn Allah's mercy. Alhamdulillah, we praise and thank Allah that we don't get the previous misdeeds of our forefathers, our ancestors, but we can get their blessings. So we'll see that here. Like down the line, we look at Idris. So who some say Idris was Akhenaten or Enoch, which they all coincide around the same time. Akhenaten was a king who called to oneness or monism or unicity, also known as monotheism, right? What is Islam? Like calling to oneness. And it's so fascinating because when you look at all the languages, they come back to one. And there is one, like for instance in Arabic, there's one letter that stands out, Ra, and it means repetition. Each letter in Arabic has its own meaning. And so Ra is repetition. And often when we talk about Egyptians, when we talk about Akhenaten and these kings, they're often attributed with polytheism, which is true, just like Hindus and Buddhists and all these things are often attributed with that. But there are always every single nation and tribe was sent a person, a prophet, right? And it goes in cycles, right? Cycles. They 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 affirm some of what their ancestors did, and they renew or they mujaddid, right? They're reviving the things that have been basically tainted, right? And so we see that with Akhenaten, where we see that with Moses, even where he said, the religion of your ancestors, like he says that in if you have, sense, if you have aql, right? Like if you have logic, the Lord of Mashriq wal Maghrib, of the East and the West, okay? And what is between them? If you think like in that same line of logic and reasoning with the Pharaoh, Musa references his ancestors. But so Akhenaten, though, like these Egyptians, like Akhenaten, were said to worship multiple gods, but Akhenaten called to one. And often when we think about the one, we might think of it as Ra, because often he is seen as the ultimate God, right? And it's almost as if the names of Allah were turned into idols somehow, because it's like saying like, oh, you're a polytheist because you believe in the names of Allah. No, Allah has many names, but they're not many gods. They are just descriptions for the one. And so somehow you could see how that may have happened with the Egyptians, specifically Akhenaten, who called back to, you could say Ra, like the repetition, the God of repetition, the ultimate God, the Batin, right, the hidden one. Those are all names for Ra. And what is Allah but truth? That's what also Ra is known as. But anyways, I digress. So we're looking at repetition here with history. So we move forward from Idris, Akhenaten, Enoch, what have you, and we can look at the case study of Ibrahim, right? Abraham was not inheriting the karmic tie of his uncle or his father. He was actually doing his own reasoning to understand who is this God. And he came to the conclusion there is no God. There is no God. These idols are not God. This sun is not God. This moon is not God. God is not something tangible that we can point to, so to speak. But he said there is no God, but the spirit of unity with people, because he was the Hanif, right? He was the one. He was the prophet of the fitra, right? The natural way. And he really established more of the, he started to establish more of the routine, the ritual around spirituality, really coming up with religion. Like, I don't know how to say it in a way that's not like crazy, but for instance, we see he's the father of all religions, quote unquote. And that was a way of teaching this universal truth that there is no God, but there's the spirit of unity with people, and how to foster that, how to foster that, how to kindle that, how to keep that unity. There's a science and an art to it that Abraham mastered, and he passed on to his children. Generational blessings, again, karmic karama, right? It's a phenomenon that it survived him to this day, centuries later. And yet, no curses, right? No, not his uncles, not anyone else's curse followed him. And so we see around these same times, Yaqub, Jacob, his sons, prophets, all prophets. Well, Yusuf was a prophet, Joseph, and the sons were still blessed just by association. Gave Yusuf, the worst of the worst. And it's very graphic in the Bible, apparently. But in the Quran, this is what really moved me about what Imam Mendes said in one of his talks recently, was how evil they were. Like, they threw a boulder according to the biblical text. The Quran is not as violent as the Yahudis and the Nasaras, the biblical and the Torah accounts. But apparently, they threw a boulder down after Yusuf or Joseph after putting him in the well, and asked, "Are you okay, Yusuf?" Not to actually see if he's okay, but to make sure he was dead. And that's like, you could say that's a karmic tie. Those are his brothers. He cared for them. He wanted to be down. He loved them down. Like, he trusted them. And this is what they did. This was the war. This was the war on the mystery, why their father loved him so much when he was just one kid. And granted, he was so beautiful. But anyways, he had also the repetition of this quote unquote karmic tie, when again the wife of the king, the Aziz, Zuleika, she tried to seduce him. And what happens, except that he is punished for that? It seems he's punished. It seems like a curse, right? That the same pattern of betrayal is manifesting from childhood of his own brothers, putting him in a well, doing something he did not deserve. Zuleika and the women of the town and the men all putting him agreeing, saying, I would rather go to the cell than to deal with this. He's being subjected to quote unquote things that he does not deserve necessarily, because he's a prophet. He's seeing true dreams. And his father is a prophet, Yaqub, Jacob. And yet these things keep happening where time and time again it seems like he can't escape misery. And that's why I say, brothers and sisters, it's a long game. So in his lifetime, he saw the turnaround. He saw the comeback, where every setback was a setup for a comeback, which is what is always happening. Sometimes we see it immediately, but a lot of times it's a long game. And maybe even generationally, you won't even see it, because, I mean, with Sarah and going back to Ibrahim, Sarah and Hajar, right, Our Lady Hajar, it seemed unfair that Hajar was made subject to whims, right, of Sarah, that she didn't want her around, that she wanted to get rid of Hajar, and that her husband left her and the newborn in the desert, which would later become Mecca, and so like the Muslim capital, pretty much. So, but in the end, it panned out. That's a powerful story in and of itself, of what you would consider to be karmic ties, but it really did work out for all of them. And so generationally, we see the children of Ishaq, Ishmael, and of Ismail, or Ismail, Ishmael, and Ishaq. Um, Speaking of Isa, think about Jesus. You could say he had a karmic tie to his mom, which was a reputation that he was born without a father. Huge missing the mark, appearance of missing the mark on his mother's part, although that wasn't the truth, like it wasn't what it seemed at all initially, right? At first sight, people could be very judgmental, but he spoke for her, and he, was very righteous, and she was also very righteous, and their family, Yahya, John, Zachariah, yeah, Zechariah, they all are in the Quran, and they were all tied together. Now, did they have those karmic ties, so to speak, that you wanted to break? Not necessarily. No. Even the things that seem like curses, right? Having a child without a father, are you kidding me? In that day and age, that could seem like a straight up curse from God. Why would God do that to her after all she did was worship? All she did was serve. Well, we see now the largest religion in the world, the largest spirituality being around that said child, as well as the second and third ones, and many other spiritualities and peoples acknowledging the goodness of these individuals. I feel like I'm rambling, but I mean, I can't say enough how these curses can be blessings in disguise, quote unquote, karmic ties. They're not. You don't believe in that. It's just showing you that we only inherit the blessings, right? Allah al-Warith is one of the names of Allah, the inheritor, and the things that we inherit. The scholars are the inheritors of the prophets, and we inherit this knowledge. We inherit these stories. We inherit these truths. And there is a war on that. People don't want us to see the pattern. They want us to be focused on the here and now and just say, tunnel vision. We see Palestine, we see Gaza and all these places being brought down. They see us talking crazy about Muslims and all these religions really, and not look at the patterns and the commonalities and the themes. Going back to the raw, the repetition, history repeats itself. So let's look at the biggest example before we jump too far into Jesus and Isa. Let's go back to Musa, another huge example. Children of Israel said that they were said to have been enslaved for like 400 years. So let that marinate for a second. 400 years. How long were the slaves in America? Um, how long? How long since the Emancipation Proclamation? How long since 1742? What is it? When did Columbus supposedly come here? I don't even know my history like that. 1492, excuse me. So these cycles happen 400 years after 1492 Emancipation Proclamation, 400 years. Children of Israel, not children of, yeah, they were both 400. Now it's another cycle, 1800s to now. When did Palestine first start having conflicts and things like that? It's inevitable. The oppressed will be on top. The question is, what will we do when we get there? Okay. So it seems hard to give thanks for being oppressed, but give thanks because it's inevitable. We will be on top. And oppression is not just outward, it is inward as well, brothers and sisters. So when we really get on top of our own souls and we really, I'm thinking myself first and foremost, can have control of that, we can have mastery and discipline of that, we will see it reflected outwardly. I promise you me. But then with Musa alayhi salam, we look at time and time again him being associated with these people, the Bani Israel, children of Israel, tribe of Israel. They would seem like a karmic tie that you would not necessarily want to be associated with compared to the Egyptians at the time. But it worked out. It really did. Because there's so much to be said. And I want to do it justice. But overall, even when they were ignorant towards him, there were so many prophets that came from that and from that tribe, and so much gnosis, like wisdom and knowledge that came from Musa alayhi salam, and from their stories that we see. We look at the situation with them and the cow, and Musa alayhi salam asked them in a very straightforward way to get them a certain type of cow, and they kept asking more and more questions. They want to be more and more specific. How many times do we do that? And so sometimes we just have to accept and sit with the mystery and the abstract, that we don't necessarily know what's going to happen. We don't know. We know in general that the oppressed will be on top, but we don't know the specifics always, and that's okay. That's where Allah can really blow our mind. Like when we saw Musa alayhi salam split, you see, that's where faith comes in. That's where rubber hits road, and we can really understand and verify this is the truth, because nobody was telling us a roadmap that specifically you're going to have XYZ amount of risk, right? Of provision. But you had faith and you trusted and you looked at the patterns in history, and not just what they give you in the mainstream textbooks, but our spiritual history, right? Our metaphysical history. And you listen to that, you listen to your heart. So let's just put this in a more tangible way. Okay. Isa alayhi salam, Jesus was always speaking out against those same Yahudi, right? And they were becoming literalists. They were becoming so fixated on the outward form or the rituals, right, of their spirituality, that they had forgot the heart of it. They had forgotten the essence. And Isa alayhi salam brought that back. And him and his disciples, they were spiritual. They did phenomenon. They performed karama, or like they basically carried out the generosity of Allah through those phenomena. Because Jesus could not, in any way, shape, or form, bring the dead to life. He couldn't make himself come to life. He couldn't make himself be brought from the dead. It's only by Allah. Yes. I have to go to school. But why don't you, you got your coffee on, you could brush your teeth, and I'll be right with you, okay? And get your underwear. So, I'm almost done. So, Jesus, or Isa alayhi salam, and his disciples, his 12 disciples, they saw things, they did things. Allah sent a table from the sky for them. If anything, this was his karmic tie. Think about the power of his mother, okay? That she held so much shame, or she had to carry so much weight of raising him, and then this is what he manifested. So you talk about generational blessings. That's what can give us hope, because there's no other way that he would get that much karama or phenomenon from Allah without some type of generational blessings. Again, it wasn't just him. Okay, let's fast forward. Let's talk about generational blessings, even with Zechariah seeing Mary, his cousin, I believe it was his cousin, pray to Allah for fruits and then get the fruits. SubhanAllah. That's so, oh my gosh, that's crazy to think. He saw those fruits. So literally she had fruits sent to her. So he prayed to Allah for fruits, right? In a figurative sense, he wanted to have a son, and he got them. So those are generational blessings, karmic ties. Like he was literally related to Mary as a cousin, like directly related, and overseeing her, and like a mentor. And then, he actually learned from her, and he the same results. And he got similar results. And so, sister, again, I want to encourage you to think about the generosity of Allah rather than the karma or the tit for tat type of thinking that, this is my soul tie, this is my family, or this is my chosen family. They get wrong, they get bad, I'm going to get bad, I'm going to get wrong. No, it's generally only upwards. Like it's generally only gets better by Allah's standard, because that's just the nature of Allah. And so we see the same fruits being sent from the sky. So Maryam, she had fruits sent to her from Allah, being provided to her from Allah direct. She inspired Zakaria to get fruits in a figurative sense of a son, and then her own fruit, her son, right, in a literal sense, bore fruit in the sense of having fruit sent from the sky. He asked Allah for a whole feast for him and his disciples. They actually asked, and they had faith. They didn't do it to prove anything, and Allah sent it time and time again, time and time again. Same thing with Musa. It sounds very graphic, but he had a bird cut up into pieces, and then Allah reassembled it by His will. This is karama. This is a phenomenon. This is a generosity of Allah. Why did Musa do it? To prove something? No, just to thabit qulub, to make his his faith even more established. So all these things come back around to Moses' time. And of course, maybe we'll have to do a whole nother live on Muhammad, the chosen one, Mustafa. So long as happy God bless his own great and peace, because he combined the best of all of those worlds, where we see those generational blessings come to pass. Him being Khatam al-Nabiyyin, the seal of the prophets. And yeah, I'm going to actually stop there, because you can imagine that there's a wealth and a gold mine of examples of karama or phenomenon and generosity of Allah in his example, the Prophet. But I want to go back to this idea of like being a warith or an inheritor, this idea of rizq, Allah being a razzaq or the provider. Go brush your teeth. Go brush your teeth. You want a lollipop? Yes, no? Lollipop? No? Anyways, one other thing about Riz. Hi, to whoever is saying hi. I don't know how to pronounce that username, but thank you. So think about Riz, like this word, Gen Z word it is, in relation to this provision. Because provision is not just monetary. Provision can come from your riz, from your charm, from your charisma, right? Charisma coming from Christ, or from that same idea of being able to perform these things by Allah's will, to do these things by Allah's will. So you're very, okay, let me just get my thoughts together for a second. Like, you know where I'm going with this. Where risk is your, it's more than just your money, it's your ability to communicate and to be able to persuade. And as all the prophets did, it's not always through words. Sometimes it's just through your being. Sometimes it's just through the things that Allah manifests through you. Generational blessings. Right? Karama. So sister, I hope this starts to really dispel the idea of karmic ties and wanting to break them. If there were such a thing as karmic ties, I would not want to break them. If anything, soul ties, you have that choice of trying to break them. But in the end, even curses can be blessings in disguise. Even things that seem like disadvantages can be blessings in disguise. Being born without a father, like Isa Jesus, being thrown into a well, like Yusuf by your own family, your own brothers. Then also with Musa, having a mother who had to, throw you into a river because your people, your tribe, your karmic ties or your soul ties were singled out for slavery for centuries. And also karmic ties like Qabil, the son of Adam, who survived, right? You could say our human nature is like that, but look what he bore. Look at what came from him. Look at the children of Qabil. Even Qabil was blessed, okay, with righteous children, offspring. Also those who weren't, but I'm just saying it's kind of like you got to take the bad with the good. Like you got to take the dark with the light in a sense. So that's interesting that there's a 13-year-old watching. I appreciate you being here because you are the future. hmm And I hope you take something from this. So, ooh, somebody from Poland. Thank you for being here. Shout out to Poland. Yeah, tell me where you're from. I want to know all the things. Let me know what doesn't make sense because I'm sure if you just join in the middle, it's not going to always make sense. But feel free to look at the replay. I will post this again. This went super long, longer than I expected. But may Allah bless you with rizq. May Allah bless you with karama. And may Allah bless you with nur and khair and light, all good things. So rizq being provision, karama being his generosity, nur being his light, khair being his abundant greatness and care. A lot of things, it's like are hidden in plain sight. So just looking at the language can tell us a lot. And I'm going to leave with one other thing, unless you had something you wanted to share um, that I could address. And I will also come back because I'm doing a series. In case you didn't know, this is like a part of it, going 100 days straight on YouTube, challenging myself to. And the last thing I will say is about currency. So, currency can mean two things. Currency can mean, uh, usually we think about it as money. There are different currencies in different countries, different forms of, we call it money in the US, but there's different names for it, like pesos or real, all of these things. I would love to know what you guys call it in Poland and Russia. But that's one name for it. And the other meaning of currency is like electric, right? Something unseen that is transferred. It's always something that's transferred, but it can be something that is like more electric or energetic, or it can be something that we think of as more monetary. Okay. But the point is that we're exchanging. And I wanted to talk about this because language is so important. We have this currency for a reason, this idea of currency. And that currency doesn't always have to be material, but can also be spiritually not or unseen naturally because of electric currents. We know that. Okay. Also, with the value of the dollar, quote unquote, or the different currencies going up and down, it's an unseen thing. It's not necessarily that it has a one on it, so then it's worth one, but $1 can have different value based on the market. Like it's a whole science. But I say this to say that that whole idea of risk or provision is the same thing. That your provision is also spiritual, and we can get generational provision, spiritual, blessings. Okay. We know this because the bloodline of the prophet, God bless his soul and grant him peace, survives us today. And those people are signaled out as also being more worthy of respect, right? And there are several bloodlines. Like it gets really complicated, but it's not just him. Like there are others who may also, for instance, have parents who did good and were righteous and were known for that. And and then once that parent passes away, they continue to get blessings through the children. That's one way we know of sadaqah jariyah or ongoing blessings is through a righteous child, generational blessings. So it can go forward and it can go backward. We can bless our ancestors by sadaqah jariyah, right? By planting a tree, by giving charity, by reading Quran or reading something to children or to anyone of benefit, teaching others. Sadaqah jariyah, generational blessings. You're giving it back. So wow, how amazing is it that Allah gives us all of these opportunities for blessings and really no such thing as a curse. May Allah bless you and your loved ones. Take care until next time. Salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammad.